Okay, now we're going to start section 1.2, and it's over the quadratic equations, the quadratic formula, and so on. I obviously messed up when writing this, but I didn't want to rewrite it earlier, and I just now noticed that because I wrote these last Wednesday, I believe, and I never had time to make the videos in. So we have ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. One important thing on this is when we go to do the quadratic formula later, because they want us to solve some of them using that, a negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. A is always the one with x squared, b is always the one with x, and c is always the constant. And your equation always has to equal 0. But until then, let's go ahead and do this example. So on all these examples, they're wanting us to solve for x. So this first one, I have x squared subtract 2x subtract 48. So I need factors of 48 that subtract to get 2. And this works on this one because there's no leading coefficient. If there was a number here, I would have to find the factors of this number and that number that subtracted to get my center number. So factors of 48 that subtract to get 2 would be 6 and 8. And I'm going to break apart my x squared to 2 x's because x times x gives that x squared. Now since this is a subtract 2 here, and it's a subtraction sign here, I know that I'm going to have two different signs, so one's going to be a subtract and one's going to be a plus. And I want a negative 2, so I'd have my larger number, my 8, it's going to be the negative, and my 6 is going to be the positive. And then if I wanted to check this, x times x is x squared, x times 6 would be 6x, subtract 8x, subtract 48. And then 6x subtract 8x would be negative 2x. Now then, I'm going to make both of these equal to 0, so x subtract 8 equals 0, and x plus 6 equals 0. Add 8, so x equals 8, and x equals negative 6. And those would be my two answers. And when they have the set notation for you on there, and I can't draw the set notation very pretty, just separate them with a comma. Now if I want to check this, negative 6 squared subtract 2 times negative 6 subtract 48 equals 0, this would be 36 plus, because the negative times negative, 12 subtract 48 equals 0. 36 plus 12 is 48. Subtract 48 equals 0. Then we have 8 squared subtract 2 times 8 subtract 48. So I'd have 64 subtract 16 subtract 48. Calculator. 64 subtract 16 subtract 48. 0. So they are both answers, so this is our solution set. This one's much easier. It just looks confusing at first, so since I have x squared subtract 6x, the only thing I can factor out of both of these is an x, and I'd be left with x subtract 6 equals 0. And then I would have x equals 0. And x subtract 6 equals 0. This is what most people forget to do. There's two answers to this because this x was squared. So then this one. So my answer set will be 0 and 6. And I can check that 0 squared subtract 6 times 0 equals 0. 0 subtract 0 is 0. And then 6 squared subtract 6 times 6 equals 0. So 36 subtract 36 equals 0. And that's our first problems on 1.2.